Hi boys and girls, I hope you're enjoying your summer. This week we're going to focus on the story Ghost Towns, written by Kira Freed. Words to know: abandoned, deserted, nuclear power plant, radiation, remote, residence, resource, settlements, tsunami. Here's the table of contents. Okay, as I'm reading, I would like for you to follow along with your fingers so you can get to know the words and learn them. Bannack, Montana is now a state park and a National Historic Landmark. A deserted town. In the summer of 1862, John White found gold by Grasshopper Creek in what is now southern Montana. News of his discovery spread quickly. Within a few months, hundreds of prospectors had arrived at Grasshopper's Creek in hopes of striking it rich. By the following year, about 3,000 people lived in the town, known as Bannack. Millions of dollars worth of gold was found in the area over the next few years. However, once gold became hard to find, Bannack turned into a ghost town. Ghost towns around the world. Ghost towns are human settlements where people no longer live. As shown on the map above, these empty towns are found around the world, and each one has a story to tell. Residents often leave a town because of some kind of threat or because their work disappeared. Visitors walk among the empty buildings and imagine what life was like for the people who once called these places home. Germans built Kohlmenskop after discovering diamonds there. Top. Today, tourists walk through knee-deep sand to explore the buildings. Bottom. Resources vanish. Many ghost towns, like Bannack, are abandoned after a resource runs out. In 1908, a railroad worker found a sparkly gem in southern Africa's Namib Desert. When word got out that this find was a diamond, people flocked to the region. Soon after, the town of Kohlmenskop grew. Eventually, after diamonds became harder to find there, a better supply was discovered several hours to the south, and people moved away. Today, Grytviken, South Georgia, is home to wildlife such as penguins and seals. A research station is South Georgia's only settlement. A former settlement at the end of the world is now a haunting ghost town. Grytviken was once a busy whaling port on South Georgia, a remote island in the South Atlantic Ocean. For close to 60 years, beginning in 1904, dozens of companies on South Georgia hunted whales for meat and blubber. More than 175,000 whales were killed there. Over time, there were fewer whales around the island. Whaling companies were gone by 1965, and everyone left. Buildings, boats, and equipment remain in Grytviken. Eruptions continue to happen on Montserrat. Left. Once thriving areas on the island are now buried in ash. Right. Forces of nature. Events in nature can cause settlements to become ghost towns. Before 1995, the Caribbean island of Montserrat was home to more than 10,000 people. A volcano on the island had not been active for more than 300 years. In July 1995, the volcano erupted, and it's been erupting ever since. Lava, gases, and dangerous clouds of hot ash spill out of the volcano. The south half of Montserrat is now deserted, and the capital, Plymouth, was destroyed by an eruption. More than half of the island's residents have moved away for good. Because of Krakow's unusual beauty, the empty village has been featured in several movies. Krakow, Italy, also became a ghost town because of natural events. The village sits on a steep cliff more than 1,300 feet, 400 meters, above the surrounding land. Over the years, people faced many problems. Along with illness, crime, and poor farming conditions, local people dealt with earthquakes and landslides. More than 2,000 people once lived in Krakow. Between 1892 and 1922, over 1,000 of them left to seek an easier way of life. Krakow was almost totally destroyed by landslides between 1959 and 1972. The remaining residents were moved to a valley area about 5 miles or 8 kilometers away. In 1983, people still lived in Centralia, Pennsylvania. The town's main street looked the same as before the accident. Deadly land. Some places are almost impossible to live in after the land turns deadly. Centralia, Pennsylvania, is a coal mining town in the mountains. The town had about 2,000 residents in the mid-1900s. Life in Centralia changed forever on May 27, 1962. Firefighters set fire to the town's trash dump to clean up for a holiday. The dump was located on top of an old mining pit on the outskirts of town. The fire was not put out properly, and it spread into the abandoned mines around the pit. No one could stop it. After burning for years, the fire began to burn underneath the town. Carbon monoxide, a deadly gas, leaked into people's homes, and holes opened up in the ground. Many people moved away, and houses were torn down. A few residents who refused to leave fought in a court for the rights to stay. In 2013, Centralia's 8 remaining residents were given permission to stay for the rest of their lives. Only a few buildings are still standing in Centralia. The fire is likely to burn for many more years. By 2000, Centralia's main street looked very different. Most people had moved away, and many of the town's buildings had been torn down. A shopping area in Okuma is one of the town's no-entry zones after the nuclear accident. Water can be just as deadly as fire. Okuma, Japan was a peaceful coastal town before March 2011. A powerful earthquake struck off the coast of Japan. The earthquake caused huge tsunami waves that hit a nuclear power plant. As a result, a huge amount of harmful radiation was released into the air. People living near the plant, including thousands from Okuma, had to move away. Several years later, radiation remains high in Okuma. No one knows when or if residents will be allowed to return. Chernobyl disaster. Japan isn't the only country with a ghost town caused by nuclear accident. The city of Pripyat, Ukraine, was home to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant's workers and their families. Pripyat was abandoned after a deadly nuclear accident in 1986. St. Kilda is now a nature area that is home to about 680,000 seabirds. A hard way of life. Towns are sometimes abandoned because they are too remote. St. Kilda, Scotland is a group of small islands 110 miles, 177 kilometers off the west coast of the Scottish mainland. Fewer than 200 people lived on the islands for more than 2,000 years. Over time, the islands had too few resources for residents, including the means to grow enough food or heat their homes. Also, many young people moved away, and others were lost to illness. Life in such a remote place simply became too difficult. The last 36 St. Kildans were taken to larger islands in 1930. Homes, office towers, and other buildings in Ordos, China stand empty. New buildings are still being built, even though no one is moving there. A brand new ghost town. Most ghost towns were once lived in, but the world's largest ghost town, actually a ghost city, has always been empty. In the early 2000s, a huge coal field was discovered in Ordos in northern China. Kangbashi new area was built to house hundreds of thousands of people. However, it was poorly planned. Kangbashi is too large and too expensive. The brand new cities stand mostly empty. Villa Epequén is a ghost town located on a salty lake in Argentina. After a bad storm that caused a nearby dam to break, the town was underwater for many years. Empty places. Ghost towns can be old or new, and they exist for many different reasons. However, they all have one thing in common. They are lonely places with secrets to share. Learning their stories brings life to places where only shadows and memories may remain. Think about it. Which cities and towns have you lived in or visited? Hundreds of years from now, some of these places may be ghost towns. What might happen to cause people to move away? I hope you enjoyed learning about these ghost towns. Make sure that you're reading this book every day. Follow with your fingers and think about questions that you can ask about ghost towns. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.